Welcome back, and I'm Ken with the Shop Mini RC, and we did a video on the FCX24 doing all-wheel steering or four-wheel steering and rear wheel control, and there were some issues that we ran into, and one of those was that some of the trucks, like our yellow one here, well, it's not yellow right now, but it's the yellow truck, they have a different channel 3 on the receiver where they only have full left and full right. So we told everybody, make sure you check which receiver you're running before you try to go out and buy all the stuff to give yourself rear wheel steering. However, we got a message on our The Shop Mini RC Facebook page from Also Ran. That's their nickname. And they messaged us and told us that they found a little trick. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you that little trick. Also, using that same trick, you can go ahead and adjust your trim on channel 3 and 4. Let's get into it. So we're going to go ahead and start with our truck that was not working on the channel 3 for left, right, and center, but only left and right. And I went ahead and unhooked the transmission servo and hooked the steering servo straight in to channel 3 so I can show you. So let's go and turn it on. And you'll see our channel 3 is doing what we don't want it to, just left and right. So this won't work for any sort of rear wheel steering, right? It's only have left and right. No way to center it. So that's how your transmission is usually working on the ones that have no neutral. You just have full first or full second with no middle ground neutral. However, Also Ran showed us a very cool trick. And this is useful for pretty much any truck if you're going to use channel 3 or 4, and even on your transmission servo, because some transmissions, some people have mentioned that they don't have neutral anymore, or it's not fully shifting into second or fully shifting back into first. So this will let you adjust your dual rate and your trim for those as well. So all you got to do is make sure your truck and your transmitter are on and double click the bind button. It's got to be within like 2 seconds and you'll get this blinking happening. Okay, now what that means is your channel 3 will be adjusted by your steering trim, and your channel 4 will be adjusted by your throttle trim, which is very cool. So let's go ahead and demonstrate. We still have our full left, full right going on, no center. However, let's go ahead and put it on center. We'll put our channel 3 on center, and we're going to adjust our trim. And it's going to snap at some point. Whether you adjust it left or right, the trim will snap to center. And when it snaps to center, like that, you now have a center. Look at that. Center. Left, right. Well, left, right. Whatever. You get the point. So that is super awesome. This also allows you to adjust your dual rate or your endpoints. Look at that. That way you're not going to bind up or burn up your servo, because you want to make sure, yes, you want as much steering as possible. And it's going to be hard to show with these badass McHugh RC super stiff links that we have. But you can see when the servo is kind of pushing and it can't really turn any further, that's the max you really want to have it. So you want to turn it down so you have as much turning as possible without it actually putting strain on the linkage. And when we try to check our other side, if you go too far, it kind of messes it up. So this isn't a perfect solution. You don't really get a perfect solution here, but you do get your left, right, and center. You just have to have enough dual rate to be able to get it to go left and right. If you turn it down too much, if you turn your dual rate down too much, you lose your left or your right, depending on which way your trim is set. See that? So now we can't get it to go to the right until we turn up our dual rate further, and then it'll go to the right. Okay, so you'll just have to mess with it, but basically, once you're in this blinky mode, once you're in the alternate dual rate and trim, and this is your 3 and this is your 4, you can mess with it. And if you switch your trim all the way the other direction, you'll also have it. But if you center your trim on the ones that have the no neutral, you will lose your center. Okay, completely lose your center if you center your trim. So your trim needs to be all the way left or all the way right. Now, you can dial your trim back just a tad and it seems like the trim sort of adjusts just a little. You can see. Oh, here, let's do it like this. You can see just a little, right? But if you go too far, again, you lose your center. So really, you don't have a lot of trim control, unfortunately, with the models that don't have neutral. But you can still do that. And if you find that your steering, when you're centered, now mind you, you have to take your steering horn off, right? Your servo horn, make sure you're centered, take your servo horn off and recenter everything on your rear axle so you can be as straight as possible. We discussed this in the other video, which we'll post over here where we did the first installation. If you need to adjust your trim, there are tricks to do that. Different servo horns and adjustable drag links and things of that nature. But if you notice that it's kind of going one way over the other when you're centered, try flipping your trim to the other side and then it readjusts when you're on center. And maybe you'll get a better spline to get you on center. Okay, so that does give you a little bit of flexibility there if you trim all the way left or trim all the way right, and that'll get you going. But you can adjust your dual rate quite a bit before it kind of locks you back into the no center. You just got to be careful with how far you go with it. But that is awesome. So that when you're on the transmission, if you have your transmission plugged into channel 3, you can adjust your transmission in that way. Any servo that's plugged into channel 3, you can do that. We haven't tried channel 4 yet. Let's go ahead and see what happens. So channel 4 is this button here, and it's the full press, right? So you have full left and full right. Now, you're not going to get a center, I don't think, out of this in any capacity. No. But you can trim. So you can adjust your trim, which is great if you need to adjust your trim for your transmission. If you put your transmission on channel 4, you can now adjust the trim, and you can adjust your dual rate. That way, if you're not shifting all the way in, or you're shifting too far, and you notice your little the little shift rod here, if you notice that bending, then you can turn down the dual rate. And then you can have it so it's pushing the servo less, right? That way you're not bending things. Or turn it up if you need more. Okay? And again, you can adjust trim here. It's just not quite as much. And again, there's no center on channel 4 at all. So just be aware. All right. So if you have the version where you have no center, now you can probably get center. You just don't have as much trim. You can just shut it all off and it goes back to your channel 1 and channel 2. And then you'll have to probably reset your trims before you get your steering, and you're good to go. Okay. So it locks in all the trims before you shut it off. And when you shut it off, turn it back on, you go back to the regular setup, and you have to readjust your trims a little bit. But then from there on out, on and off, you're good to go. It'll keep the trims wherever they're set on your 3 and 4, and then however they're set currently for your 1 and 2. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the other truck. I'm going to show you the trucks that do have center, and the channel 3 has center. And I'll show you how you can adjust your trim. It's the same thing, but you're able to adjust your trim. So there's our regular steering, our drive, our transmission's on our channel 4. Okay, and then our rear wheel steering is on our channel 3. So if our trim for some reason was off, we could just double click, go into blinky mode, and we can actually fully trim our rear steer now. Now again, this is on the ones that already do have the center. We can also adjust our max dual rate, so our endpoints essentially, and get a lot of turn out of it. Because out of the box, I think the dual rate's turned down pretty heavily on channel 3. So now you can really crank it. Just make sure you don't, again, you don't want to push it too far and bind and break stuff on your servo. But that's going to get you a lot of extra turning because you can adjust your dual rate. And again, trimming the rear on a stock remote, guys, pretty awesome. And then again, turn it off, turn it back on, and you'll have to adjust your trim on the front because your dials were different and your dual rates. So make sure you do your rear before you do your front. All right, guys. So how awesome is that, guys? Huge shout out and thanks to Also Ran for bringing that to our attention. If you guys learn anything about these trucks that I haven't talked about, let me know, and I can share it with the audience and everybody else out there. It's a huge help because there's a lot of stuff going on in these, and sometimes, especially getting into the electronics, it's just like you got to dig real deep to be able to find stuff. And yeah, he had the same issue. I guess got kind of lucky on how he found out how it worked. And now we all know. So everybody in the comments below say thanks, also ran. Also ran. That's how we say it. Also ran. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, hit the bell. Do all those things, I guess. Anyway, get out there, smash them, crash them, bash them. Don't break the expensive parts.